Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. Please all note this is a pre-recorded show because our guest is in the UK. So we are broadcasting via International Public Radio on United Public Radio 105.3 FM from beautiful New Orleans. Amelia and I will be in chat tonight, so we will be here mingling in with all of you. We are fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers who have been with us from the very beginning. We so appreciate and love you. Thank you for being a part of our journey. Of course, we cannot forget Dr. Snick, aka Justin Snicker, for his contribution of time and his music and his voice to our intro and outro. He is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music. It is available everywhere: Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, you name it, he's there. Go have a look-see. So tonight we do welcome the return of our friend Shawn Williamson, all the way from the UK, Scotland to be exact, and he's going to be discussing ancient civilizations and technologies with respect to stone, which is super interesting because you're getting into some out-of-place artifacts and things like that. So again, being that we're pre-recorded, you can still communicate with us via all of our avenues on Facebook, the Outer Realm group page, Canada's Most Haunted group page, of course, all of our YouTube pages and Twitch. So with that being said, join us there tonight. It's going to be a great, great segment. Oh, and we do have, I'm sitting here reading, I can't forget our little co-host, Versace.
I don't have a puppy sitter today.
He will not leave his mama, so he's going to sit here looking cute.
And he thinks I'm leaving, so he's not happy. And I don't have anybody home today. Everybody's working away.
Yep.
From here today. So yeah, I'm kind of wishing we had that studio available to us right now, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I'm just inviting our guests as
yes.
There we go.
So excited and so grateful that Shawn Williamson could be here with us tonight. And as Michelle said, we will be communicating with you in the chat room tonight. So feel free to ask away. Please keep it to YouTube because that is the only place that we're going to be able to see that chat room tonight, as we will not be on StreamYard with all of those platforms in front of us. Tonight's guest is returning and we adore him. Shawn Williamson will be discussing ancient civilizations and technology respect to stone. Let's welcome Shawn Williamson.
We're waiting for him to come online. So I think he's sending pictures and I'm not going to be able to do pictures because I just didn't get them soon enough.
Yeah, it's tough. They had no, they didn't have any internet. Are you going to get down? No. Of course not.
Like a 20-pound dog on your lap for 2 hours.
Oh, sorry. Awesome. Did I choke you? I'm sorry. Yes, of course not.
I know.
Yeah, at least they have their power back because that was one heck of a storm for them. No heat for days for some people in England.
That's really tough. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Very, very much so.
I'm just going to see here, please.
Hopefully, he might have a bit of a delay because they're just getting power back.
There we go. Hello.
Hi,
hello,
how
folks.
are you?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Wow. Hey, it's not 2 a.m.
Thank God.
It's amazing how much more energy you guys have when it's not 2 a.m. Sorry, no one's here to watch him, so he's like won't walk away from me. He's driving
I
me
like that.
crazy right now.
Yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm in on this. I want in. That's
Yeah.
it.
And he's
So-
used to with my daughter being in her meetings and on her desk, which is what he's trying to do here. So it's just, yeah, we're
Just
going to
let
have
him
a
have
talk.
sip out of the
Savvy
Folgers
and I
cup.
are going to
We'll
have a
do-
talk.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
Get the
we're def-
sponsor and the shots. And
We're definitely going to have here. Dog loves Folgers.
there we go. Heck, I should have brought mine in. We just have a
Yeah.
whole free-for-all. So how are you?
Yeah.
How are things out your neck of the woods?
Yeah,
Oh.
we've had some bad weather and stuff like everybody else in the world, but it's pretty good. I'm in my expedition bus at the moment.
Oh.
So down on Lake Windermere, and
Wow.
ready for some adventures.
Ooh, adventure sounds nice. Sounds like a future show. So
Yep.
what do you have for us tonight? It's always exciting when you come on. It's your wealth of information, and this one feels super interesting. Dealing with ancient civilizations and technology. It almost okay. What is that about?
Somebody's at the door. Yeah,
The alarm system just went off.
I'll mute.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
experiment.
Only seems to work on its vertical axis. This thing. So, but that's okay. You can see me
Oh yeah, we can.
loud and clear.
Yeah, we absolutely can. So no problem. So, where do you want to start with all of this? Because I saw the little short video you sent, which was very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not really a generalist. A lot of people get into examination of ancient artifacts, and particularly in stone, from a generalized perspective, whereas I'm a technician to some extent because I actually make them,
Right.
and by way of wanting to know more about how ancient cultures, if you can call them that, manufactured artifacts, but also how they built with stone and what those techniques were, and how come we still haven't got to grips on how they were able to, make some of the greatest edifices and buildings of all time.
Yeah, because they're still standing. I mean, you guys in the UK have stuff that's been standing for 1,000+ years. Here on this side of the world, there are some structures. Don't get me wrong, but we just can't seem to even put up a building that lasts more than 100 years. So, what's the secret?
Well, I mean, that's the fallibility of the modern age. Well, isn't it nicer to consider these ancient civilizations and how they were created from their perspective? And I guess that's what I'm trying to do with with my analysis of ancient cultures and the pyramids, etc. And more, I would say, with me, South American temples and stuff. But I for instance, one of my roles as if you want to call it, as a technician, is to analyze possible forgeries. I do that for galleries that sell antiquities, and so it's very site specific. I don't have the luxury of being able to bring in vast amounts of knowledge like you see and make outlandish statements, because the evidence is in front of me. What I've got to try and do is work out what tools we used, and I apply that physics to some extent to when I analyze building stones from ancient cultures and how they could possibly have done those things without, to some extent, with lost technology,
I definitely agree with you on that. I think it's a dying art, as I'm sure you agree. Wow, you're ready for us. Is that coffee? Wow. And we have
don't ask what you don't want the answer to.
Bingo.
I know.
Don't ask what's in the cup.
Wow, that's a lot of Java.
Folgers. We shipped it over.
I know.
Be
Oh,
careful.
my. So I think when it comes to, like, let's concentrate then on South America. There's a lot of finds that are starting to surface, I think, with modern technology like LiDAR and things like that. So there's a lot hidden that's still, I mean, with the earth, just purging, as I like to say. However, because you have a lot of people have a lot of different theories on that, but there's a lot of things that are starting to surface and rise up out of the jungle, let's say. Or maybe there's just more of a trained eye that can look at, let's say, in South America, look at a hill and say, no, that was once a structure or a pyramid, or there was city here, there was roads here, or there were roads here. You're going to start finding a lot more stonework coming to light.
Yeah, because I mean, that's mainly where their expertise lay. I mean, we don't obviously timber rots, but stone doesn't. So, from that perspective, we have something to look at. But for instance, at Pumapunka in Bolivia, those stones there, which are high up in the mountains, how they got them there is still a mystery to us all. But not just that, how that they were able to make such very fine, within a millimeter, angles in stone with, presumably what tools, because we would struggle today to find tools to cut that particular type of stone that those edifices and structures are made of in that area. And so what were they using? How were they able, did they have a secret to some extent, like in one scientist I read recently on Machu Picchu was saying that, they used some kind of a chemical reaction engendered from plants.
Wow.
So, yeah, and there is some substance behind that. But was it that they were so concentrated on stone that they went into depths that we, even with our great cathedral technology and stuff, were not able to reach? Did they go further than we could possibly ever imagined? Or is this the stuff of lost technologies? And we've heard all that stuff. I love reading Graham Hancock and all those people, but it's time to get down to the nitty gritty, to examine each stone. And people do that. I know they do. The advantage that I have is I actually make this stuff as well as a natural born sculptor. And I dealt with this stuff at university as well. For instance, I did a paper on handheld implements, handheld stone implements in North America. And, many native people were using stone in a way that we could not possibly have imagined. But, and very, very ergonomic. So if you pick up something that they used, say, to pound maize or whatever, or corn, or grind stuff, or use them in specific ways, these tools are what we call ergonomic, and they're so beautiful to handle. Maybe they were making them just because of that, but how were they making them? What tools were they using? Were they pounding the softer stones, for instance, although in most cases they're not that soft, they're on the Morse scale? Were they pounding them against harder rocks to make something? Or was it just a process like in Skara Brae, where they found in northern Scotland, where they found platonic solids that had been made again in stone? Were they just made over several years, for instance? But there's something that we're missing. I've heard it call that which was lost a specific technology, stone technology, that enabled them to do stuff with stone that we can't, and not only that, how did they move these stones? Where, what kind of technology did they use to raise a 900-ton obelisk or a 900-ton block of stone that they quarried, say, at Baalbek in Lebanon? All these things we're hearing about constantly. Again, where I'm coming from is analysis, site-specific analysis per stone. And perhaps that's where I'm hoping to be able to, or that is where I'm hoping to be able to unlock some secrets,
Yeah, I find it interesting that you look at some of these buildings and the stones are like, you can't even get a little piece of paper slid in there. Like, they're just so tight and there's just no room in there. They were so precise that, I mean, yeah, you might look at that and go, yeah, I could do that. But I find we can't do that today. And we're so technologically advanced. Why, what do you think? What are we doing wrong? What did the ancients know that we just can't seem to grasp? And yet the evidence is all around us.
Well, I think they had a different socio-economic structure whereby, everybody's racing during the week. All they can focus on is making a living, bringing some money home, doing the job, and it's getting more and more pressured. We're going round and round in circles and we get nowhere. They didn't have those constraints then. They were able to work.
And
they were absolutely. And they were able to mobilize great swathes of labor to do this work, but not as we would imagine, as a capitalist operation where people were getting paid to some extent. It was they weren't hampered or hobbled by that. They had a different perspective of their place in the world. We don't. We can't. We can only see to the end of next month's paycheck.
Right.
So there's that aspect to take into consideration. And again, this is what I'm trying to put together, is a operative manual for the analysis of stones in some of the types of buildings that we've mentioned.
And some historians would argue that they were slaves. They had no choice.
Yeah, they would, but they're usually perhaps, born from the capitalist system. I don't know. They may have had people providing food for them. If you're doing what you love and you have food and the community sense, is that not enough?
Well, I agree. For the longest time, they thought it was slaves who built the pyramids, but then they found, the year I was there, they were working on an excavation close to the pyramids, and it ended up there was an entire village there, a community of the people who did work there, and they were finding on stone, they were finding that there was writing and hieroglyphs of people being paid, and that they were actually purchasing food. It was an entire community. So I think a lot of the mentality shifted when this find came to light. So they were paid workers per se.
Yeah.
How they were paid, it's obviously it's different, but it was an interesting find because the world for the longest time believed otherwise. And I think a lot of that information will start coming to light as well.
Yeah, I'd heard of that also, but it kind of staggers the belief system to realize when you see how many millions of stones weighing 2 tons. I think there's something like 3 million actual stones that go into one of the major pyramids in that set of three.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been there. I love it.
There's something we're missing. When you see that from the top, those stones, how high and how much labor was, needed. What did they know that we don't? Because I've worked on cathedrals. I know the ancient techniques of stone carving, how that was the process of that, and how similarly they were able to use those techniques were actually brought down from those ancient civilizations. Stone carving implements and tools haven't really changed, except we don't find many at all in the pyramids. I think they've found about 7. That's what was happening. What we find, iron-fired chisels around a cathedral site, or in different places in Europe and North America. But how come we're not finding specific tools that they used? For instance, even tempered bronze, or even hybrid type iron smelting technology, where they added various other ingredients into it to make harder tools. Even those can't cut stone that's like granite. It's very difficult to cut to granite by hand now. It's so labor intensive, it's unbelievable. So in my mind, we're missing something.
Do you think, for example, that there's a lot of theories of the ancient astronaut theory, and I'm only going to bring it up because there's evidence. If you go to Saqqara being one, you have there's a Saqqara bird object that they found all in stone that shows, what this really looks like. It's ET. You look at the tomb of Seti I. He's got hieroglyphs that are clearly futuristic, helicopters that match some of the United States military copters. There's discs. There's all kinds of things. There's aliens with big eyes, which would look like the gray. And then there's an incident just going back, I think, in the somewhere between the 50s and the 70s. The date eludes me, where the Russian came in. There's a tomb in Egypt, and they got a hold of a very tall pharaoh that, when you clearly look at the photographs, it's a tall gray of sorts.
You see the big.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he's they would have cared for him the same way as they would have a pharaoh, but he's clearly not from here. It's like the ancients worked. There's evidence all over the world of the ancients working with these beings. Whether we say beings are from the stars, they could have been here long before us. I mean, the Earth has purged itself of civilizations. We're like the 5th run. We don't really know. But what sort of kind of got pushed aside as taboo because, government said so or military said so, I think was embraced once upon a time. And I think it's slowly being embraced again. But they've left evidence on cave walls in the form of paintings, in the form of hieroglyphs, in the form of structures. What do you think about that theory? Is it just sort of like too far out there, do you think? Or...
Well, no. I mean, that was one of the, reasons I was examining stuff in Chile, for instance, which, as you know, is moving on down to Antarctica, Punta Arenas, and on those areas. And there's huge amounts of activity going on there at the moment. And we've all read about Admiral Byrd's trip and what happened there. There's just so much, for curious minds, there's just so much to get one's teeth into, including hollow earth theories, and of course what Plato was discussing in his it's quite interesting, isn't it, philosophically, that Plato would You know, we can study certain aspects of Plato, but nobody likes it when he gets into talking about the Atlanteans. You know, oh
No,
no, you can't go there. You know,
no,
keep that one out.
exactly. Well, I think mankind, or history, has chosen to be selective as to what is out there. But like I said, things are starting to surface and starting to be uncovered, and you're seeing more and more information cut in stone, literally, that can't just be taken away. That's going to start contradicting a lot of history as we know it.
Well, I agree entirely with you. You know, the thing is, there's so much contradicts history as we know it. You know, that hidden archaeology, for instance, or archaeology that doesn't fit the normal canon of how they want to categorize, their plan for how people existed in the past. It's, if anything falls outside of that, then they go into the room where nobody's going to see them. Like those anomalous objects that were found in seams of coal, like hammers that were, in seams of coal 1 million years old or something, 500,000 years old, and fabulous things like this that nobody ever gets to know about. And as you say, all this stuff, more of this stuff is coming to light, and it's incredibly interesting in this particular segment of world history, because we might be facing within the next 10 to 15 years the end times, in one way or the other, just as we've done in the past with the deluge, and the various apocalyptic events that have occurred when the earth has changed its axial alignment, in trajectory and stuff. And curiously, we're in this midst of this pandemic, if you could call it that, or whatever it is that's happening, and they're finding all this stuff as well. So probably about one of the most interesting points how different is it now than, say, 25 years ago, when all you were bothered about was going out to the cinema and existing with hardly any technology and going to the park. I remember my time in Toronto and stuff like that, and life was so much more beautiful and simpler, and all of a sudden we're in the midst of this dystopian nightmare.
I'm learning a lot from both of you, because I don't know much about ancient civilization, so I'm grateful right now. So I'm quiet because I'm listening.
Yeah, just throw yourself in there anytime.
I only know the bits and pieces that I've seen on television, like a lot of people who don't research the topic matter. Where I've seen the hieroglyphics, I've seen the carvings in the walls of the pyramids, and I have seen what looks like astronauts, like bubble encased people on these walls. This is not stuff you can make up. I'm disappointed in all of the governing agents who run history nowadays, who do not want to rewrite it because they see it a certain way, but yet they'll allow protesters to rewrite actual history that maybe should perhaps not be rewritten. Rewriting it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but to see something that exists and pretend it doesn't, it's just unfair.
Well, academia also. You look at archaeologists are just, no, that's not a thing. No, that's not a thing. Not all. Yeah. I know some pretty open-minded archaeologists, but for the most part, you try broaching on the topic of ancient aliens, oh my word, that's just not a thing. So I think that makes your job a little bit harder, Shawn. How do you proof's right there in front of you, but how do you convey that?
I don't know. There's so much ego involved in academia. It's like, I remember when I was at college, and one of the professors, I used to like to write creatively, and he used to like to sort of disassemble what I was doing and made me feel, bad about what I was doing, as if I shouldn't be attempting to write creatively. And on one day I thought, well, I'll just do a little test. I was 19 or something. I'll tell you where I was at, the community college at Rexdale Boulevard, Humber College it was called.
Humber College, yeah.
Yeah, and so I copied a text out, one front page out of a really classy novel. It was called The Horseman by Joseph Kessel. And this guy was always pulling me up on the punctuation, And I left out the punctuation, and I pretended that I'd written this first page from Joseph Kessel's The Horseman. And I said, could you help me with the punctuation on that? And he said, yes, of course. He said, that's good that you're learning about punctuation more so than trying to be creative, And he took this first page of this book, that I'd written, copied from this book, added the punctuation. So then I thought, now I'll compare it to the original. And it was totally different. So
perspective.
Yeah. So that's what I said. Look, I said, you're trying to kill my creativity here. And I said, you've not even got the technical knowledge to do your own job. And I said, what's that about? And he was very angry, I have to say, but I proved the point.
That's right.
I think that's what professors are there for. You're there to, challenge them as well. It's not just about them teaching.
Ego.
Yeah.
I like that
well,
word.
yeah. I have a
Ego.
friend who's an exceptional professor who has written many, many textbooks for universities, and he is. I've always said that if I had to go back, I'd wish he was my prof at the time, because he's just great with his students. You have to be open-minded. You can't have ego.
Too much of that in any field.
I think at the time too, it was really bad, because you're talking about a time where teachers and professors had a much more substantial authority than they do have now. Now they're having conversations with their students, even in high school and elementary school, as opposed to, the 70s, maybe they were a little bit more closed-minded, and I'm the prof, you're the student, this is the way it goes, kind of thing. And they forget it's a private education. University and college is a private education. Your jobs are paid for by the tuitions. So,
that's it. And it's always, quite often researchers and stuff will jump to the highest bidder, or whoever is employing them. They tailor their research to suit them. So it's all, it's not getting us ahead from what I can see, and that's why investigating some of these ancient civilizations and see how they were able to do more than us with less, is we should be learning some lessons with that. Unless, if you're not going to go down the, the ancient race or civil, not the ancient race, but the alien question. We still haven't got to grips with that.
But it makes sense if you think about it with the technology. Could they maybe have taught, or maybe did they have equipment that could move and levitate these large stones? Because a lot of people believe you can do that with frequency.
Well, they're doing it now on a small scale, aren't they? With, those experiments where they're levitating a drop of water or whatever with certain vibrational frequency. And, it's amazing what they did with that, and how many people are into that at the moment, resonance of stone and ringing stones, and and the that guy down in Florida that
yes, the coral, or what is it called? Something coral castle, something.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's believed that he levitated these stones into place there's a bit of a conspiracy that goes with him, because it is believed that he had a device that could do this, that he did receive from extraterrestrials. And apparently the government got a hold of it from him when they realized what he was doing. But again, that's a conspiracy.
And where does he live?
It was Florida. So
Of
Florida,
course it was.
they're right down there with the base.
Of course it
I know.
was. Everything is in Florida.
Just saying,
Oh my
I know.
gosh.
But the thing is, it's still there. It exists. You know, he somehow did this, and the people were witness to stones raising up. Like, how did he do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you checked it out, Shawn? Have you been down that way?
I've not managed. I was in Miami once when I was at sea, but I've not managed to get to that particular place. But it's on my need to do list.
I would be really curious to see what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be
on your way to Chile.
Yeah,
South America.
Hopefully on the way to Antarctica.
I'm really hoping that with everything going on in Antarctica, oh my gosh, you would definitely be boots on the ground. Somebody I would want to get an opinion from.
That's a far cry from Florida.
It is, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating what they're finding in Antarctica right now. Like, aside from the geological stuff, it's huge.
Yeah, well, you know, I read one of the, shall we say, from a prominent intelligence agency, a deluge theory, and it was quite incredible because this particular writer had said that what he thought had happened was that the Earth. You've heard of Charles Hapgood, eh? The guy the guy that did the big study on the Pyrrhus map, which which shows the landmass under the ice. You know, so 30,000 years ago. Again, this is another massive curveball.
Well, there's a lake under there.
Academics.
There's a lake. There were jungles. It was full on.
Exactly.
Where the heck did he get that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
No, yeah. Well, again, this is the anomalous thing that's going on with, you know, being able to try to work out, put the Earth in a timeline other than the one that that's being forced on us. But they did find a woolly mammoth frozen. They found quite a few actually that had been spontaneously frozen, and
that's interesting.
They think, but when they examined the contents of what it had been eating, it was eating like buttercups and plants that were from another part of the world, you know, more sort of like South America area, not Antarctica. So, you know, giving validation to this idea that the Earth's crust shifted round, you know, so, and then spontaneously froze. Yeah, and so that's really interesting, and it's probably the Pyrrhus, and you know what's under the ice in Antarctica it's being driven, I think, you know, not just by academics and stuff at the moment, but by the military, you know.
Well, let's just go back to the Germans. Everybody knows, you know, that Hitler was on a quest of discovery, that he allegedly had extraterrestrial connections. He built a UFO. He was after all of the holy ancient artifacts, anything he can get his hands on. He revisited places like Rennes-le-Chateau, you know, like what kind of significance would that have to Hitler? You know, but he was after holy relics, and he was on a quest to deal with ETs, and he went to South America. He went to Antarctica, and there's even stories that the American military went to Antarctica when they caught wind that the Nazis were there, and that there were UFOs that kicked the crap out of the Americans. This is documented. So it's like, okay, so did he construct them, or was there something else already there? If, like, there's an ancient civilization, there's something there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
What
why
was
it's
there?
it's not possible for standard people to actually get there and see what's going on. It's almost a no-go zone area.
Yes.
So we've seen various photographs of what look like the remnants of ancient civilizations and stuff there, and people are bringing up incredible stuff on Google Earth, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, they
that
are.
one's a big one. I think the big question here too as well is why aren't they telling us?
Yeah, well, I think I think they think that everybody's going to be too disturbed to understand that there's another version of events going on as well, or
there's already disturbed people down there keeping this all from us, so I can't see it getting more
just
disturbed
tell the
than
truth
that.
here.
It's true. I know. I was going to put that right out there.
That's it.
I mean, ancient civilizations were everywhere. I go back to Freddie Silva's books based on the missing lands of, the Great Flood, let's say, or all these natural disasters where all of these cultures going back 12 to 15,000 plus years ago existed. So why is it so hard for us to understand? The planet isn't only 2,000 years old. Like there have been ancient civilizations here long before us. We're finding, out of place artifacts, that go back 300 million plus years. There was, again, it eludes me, but there was a mine that they just discovered. It was a Bosnia, some obscure place. Anyway, it was 250 million years old. And when I think they were like mining for uranium, it was something really ridiculous. But when scientists started carbon dating everything, they couldn't figure it out. Well, somebody like of real high intelligence was in there. It's mine. There's nothing left. And there's evidence of it all over the place. So why would it be so hard for us to get our head around the fact that there were civilizations here long before us, maybe long before dinosaurs?
Yeah, of course. And we don't, because we don't truly understand the nature of time. Obviously, Albert Einstein was able to enlighten us on that, and how time could work, and how we don't know how it works. It's difficult to work everything just from a materialistic point of view now. The giant scenario, when they found, we've got the evidence of the North American giants and stuff, and they've found skeletons, and the Smithsonian stuff, all the information that went to them, and we know all this stuff. It's all, but it just makes people more and more curious to find these things out. On a lesser scale, I guess it's, by way of comparison, where I live, not far, it's called the Walney Peninsula, and I used to kind of live there at one point in time. It's kind of a section of the Cistercian Abbey of Furness Abbey, and it's an outrigger of that. And down there, which is, they found lots of different Viking artifacts and stuff like that. They found a hoard of Viking coins recently, and it's in the local museum as if it was just like a bag of sweets. But it's, I think it was worth a couple of £100,000, but in it it was possibly hid maybe 940, 1000 or something like 1000 or something like that AD, and there's Islamic coins in it.
Wow.
So, yeah, so
there's a surprise.
Yeah, they were trading with Islam and in coinage as if it was just another day, and it's amazing to see that. And it's not something that's been big up, but I think it's a major find.
It is. It shows that they were everywhere. Seriously, here in Canada, we know North America's had Vikings, South America's had Vikings.
Yeah,
but then you'd have to rewrite history, wouldn't you? That could be very expensive.
Not to mention releasing power as well.
Because
the biggest scheme, when I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that tune in, and I'm not putting any of you down. I believe that there's an ounce of truth, if not more, to every theory that's out there. It's just sometimes like broken telephone. But the governments also control what we learn and know. So keeping it back isn't always about money, but about control. That's why they use Hollywood in so many ways. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about how governments use Hollywood to instill fear in us with aliens and other civilizations as being barbaric or cannibalist when they weren't, so that we never want to search it, because that fear is instilled in our minds. And then it's like, oh, I don't even want to go there. Most people will not research
the church
it.
itself took from every culture that it amalgamated. Yeah. There's more pagan stuff in the Catholic Church than people would have you know. So, it's all out there. I think people just have to. We become, like you say, Shawn, so accustomed to living our lives. Some people have to work 2 jobs because they keep you that way. That we don't question anything. You don't go in there and ask questions. But realistically speaking, it's all in front of you if people just take the time to look.
It's easier not to, though.
It's safer.
Yeah, it's easier and it's safer. And what's sad is that we have this big fear. And sorry, Shawn, I know Michelle's asking you.
No.
We have this big fear of this information and this reality, which most of us know is there. But it's probably a better life.
What?
Knowing the truth, what really is happening, what is out there. Sorry.
Ignorance isn't always bliss.
No, it's not. And I feel like there's a reason why it's being held back. It's not just about rewriting history. It's about control and power. And that's a whole other
Well, we'll go back to Antarctica, using that as a basis. You've got governments, who have now, since the World War II, been fighting for space down here, and nobody's talking about it. Why? What is down there? What is it about? I mean, we're finding ancient civilizations all over the place. Really, we are. Things are surfacing everywhere. What is it about this location that it's taboo, that you can't get near?
Well, yeah. I mean, anybody that's curious is probably thinking the same thing. And, we know some of the theories that are going around and stuff, but it's a no-go area to some extent because of the implications of what it is. It must be big. Everybody's thinking, but I think they should open these subjects up to, in a bigger way. I think there should be a university for so-called conspiracy theories, because it's good to have 2 sides of a story to anything, isn't it? I mean, why is it that they want to shut down certain people's opinions, when it doesn't actually fit their own? Sometimes control. Sometimes people are wrong, and sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we're off the mark. And wouldn't it be great if we had organizations that were dealing in, degrees for conspiracy theorists? And that was a term that was originally invented by intelligence agencies in any case. And, to, in a way, malign anybody that had a version of events that was different to theirs. It would, also it'd be great to have departments in governments for good ideas and, ways to help communities and people in simple ways, because there's an evolvement of consciousness taking place on the planet at the moment, and
yes, evolution,
yeah. And I think societies should be mobilized accordingly to embrace these new evolved processes of thinking. And it's probably the planet's never been in a more dangerous, but a more creative, vulnerable, and it's bringing out, in many cases, sometimes the best in people.
My concern is exactly what Amelia mentioned earlier. People right now are trying to erase history by removing some of these monuments. They're defacing monuments. Oh, heck, even the pharaohs would deface monuments of their predecessors. You can't stop it from being a thing, however. So, is there any fear maybe that when you say perhaps that, there are a majority of people that don't want to know. Ignorance really is bliss to some. They don't want to know about all this. They just want to go about their lives. They want to be happy. They're just going to, follow suit, do what they're told to do. And they spend their whole lives like that. Then you get those of us who are just like, no, damn it, I want answers. That's all there freaking is to it. You go to any lengths to find it. For us, it's the show. We bring on people such as yourselves and other people at the top of their fields, who are like, no, we want answers. We dug for answers. This is our perspective. This is what we feel is an answer to this or to this or to this, and we bring it forward to, 2+ million people, just to listen to. So I don't know. Is there that fear that people are just going to lose their bloody minds and start defacing things and burying it again? Or I don't know, you have somebody like you who can go in there and say, no, this is a thing. This is a thing.
Well, I see scientists and I see academics doing analysis of stone, in the pyramids and stuff, and those areas around them, and they're pointing out holes that were drilled at high speed, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, I've seen that. That's like modern technology. I've seen those marks when you're drilling holes through stone, core drilling, for instance. And there's a certain, although the marks on the ancient stones are slightly different, but has that been done as a, some way as a deflection to some extent? And I'm looking at diamond blade marks in stone that looks like anything that you would see on high technology work that you would be working in stone today then. And I'm thinking that looks like it's been done today, or 10 years ago, to sort of almost fraudulently, it's that simple. Then I've seen other ways of working stone that can't be explained, but almost as if they were using some kind of a thermal lance or sonic vibrating type implement to drill holes that are curiously shaped, for instance, like in the shape of a star, for instance. and perfect right through the stone in, with the same shape going right through the stone itself. Very, very hard stone. And, it's technicians that need to be examining these stones, not academics. And yet, it's, for instance, I mean, I've got some stuff here that I don't know if I showed you this last time, but this is a Templar sword that I made. It's not finished yet, but I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, we can see it. Yeah,
I saw it on your Facebook page, and Jill shared it as well.
Yeah.
My favorite
beautiful.
Jill Harbeck. Yes.
So there we are. You see, and
gorgeous.
It's in stone, and listen, you can hear it, and who would have thought?
Wow.
How long have you been working on that, Shawn?
Not long. I'd done it in 2 days, really, but
oh Jesus, I was going to say that seems a little bit heavy. It's going to cost you a lot to ship it to me. No,
but if you come with it, we'll feed you.
Yeah. No, I love stone with the frequencies.
Yeah, definitely.
You can hear it.
You can.
It's like a singing bowl.
No, it is.
So
That's
it's in stone, and I mean, I could have cut that by hand, but I used some modern tools on it and stuff, and it's actually it's virtually the same weight as a sword.
I was just going to ask you, how much does that weigh?
Well, at the moment, I would say it weighs about 5 pounds. I think.
So yeah, 2 kilos.
Yeah, I've still got to take more down on it yet. It's not going to be as light as a metal sword.
But
see, I would need 2 just so I could work out with my 5 pound weight.
Now, if you bring it, I'll cook whatever you want. Yes. But you have to bring it to Michelle. I'll make you dinner.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. Wow.
It's so well balanced. I copied a Templar sword.
It's beautiful.
And it's just it's light to bear,
Yeah, that is so beautiful. I'm just going to take a quick moment to do a station ID. This is The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and myself, Amelia Pisano. Tonight, our special returning guest is the one and only Shawn Williamson, and we are talking all about ancient civilizations. Broadcasting pre-recorded, not live tonight, but we are in the chat room, so don't forget to give us a shout out and say hi. Right from the city of New Orleans on 105.3 FM radio. We are United Public Radio. We're streaming on UFO Paranormal Radio and International Public Radio. Our intro and outro, courtesy of the amazing composer and award-winning Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker. You can find him on Bandcamp and Spotify, Amazon. You can find him on Facebook and Instagram. Our sponsors, as always, from the beginning and every night of the week that we are live, are the good people at Folgers. Thank you, Folgers, for keeping us on air. We love you. So, Shawn, I'm going to take you to Pisa with me because I think you'd be a better guide for me going through my family's work than anybody else. I'd love to see it through your eyes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've been a kind of a visitor to Italy on several occasions, and I did a couple of papers on Michelangelo when I was at university and stuff, and specifically when he was carving his statue David, which had been carved from a block of which had been started by another sculptor who couldn't make an impact on the stone at all, called I think it was Agostini, and Michelangelo had the block stood up, and at that point in time he was still called a stone cutter. He kind of defined the idea of the artist as a maverick individual, although he was patronized to start with, obviously, by the church and the Medici and stuff.
He also apprenticed under one of my family members.
Wow, fabulous.
I know. I was like, wow. When I saw that, I'm like, I need to read more about this. But he saw David and David called to him. To me, that is just an incredible human
Yeah,
being. And I wonder about how many others he channeled before him to create this beautiful piece that is still with us today.
yeah. Well, it's mind-boggling. I think it's, many people who go and stand round it. I haven't seen the original, but they get a feeling of being overpowered by its presence, shall we say. There's something very special about that particular statue, and he apparently, I think it was about 28 when he started work on it, and almost started from one point in the stone, the block, like the hand, I think, or wherever it was anyway. But it was a process that he was able to release the the form from the stone, and that's when he carved an angel or something like that. That he did it in the same way, which is a relief carving technique, and would start at the finger, for instance, and work his way down until the whole figure was revealed. But to give you an idea of the what I found out, one of his technique was to, if you imagine, if you had a finished figure, say an action man, for instance, and you had it in a sink of water, and that it was full of water, you imagine the action man model in the sink. As you take the plug out, the water reduces past the figure itself, revealing it as it goes down more and more. That's how Michelangelo's technique was when he was carving stone, and a lot of the work he did by himself, which is unbelievable. And Michelangelo first, Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, I don't know enough about Leonardo really to make. I know his works, I know his mathematics, I know his geometry and stuff like that. But
did you know he went on he disappeared for 2 weeks in a cave and came back saying that he had either traveled or been taken by ET, and when he did come back from that is when all of the real interesting work started.
Yep, the Mona Lisa.
Yeah. Well,
brilliance.
That great blooming of knowledge in the Renaissance, and humbly, he was a very physically strong man as well. He was able to bend horseshoes and all sorts.
Wow.
Do you know what his last
word? I went to his exhibit in Toronto with the Italian, because I did Italian immersion, and I actually learned it through the Italian language. It was really weird, but sorry, Shawn.
No. That's an interesting point. But his last words on his deathbed were, he looked up into the sky and into the ceiling or wherever he was and said, obviously talking to God, "Have I done enough?" What about that for humility?
Oh, fatto abbastanza.
I like it. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of the great minds, come from a lot of knowledge or a lot of pain. One of the two.
Yeah, that's.
They
that's true.
They just. I think when you're in a lot of pain, you go into yourself more, and you emerge like a phoenix with the knowledge and with you're not afraid to take chances. You just go out there and you just go for it.
Look at all the greats that came out of the Renaissance. Good Lord. When you look back at that, World War II, World War I, all these artists that emerged, and you see a lot of these pieces that Hitler supposedly, we're not going to supposedly, we know he took them. And you see all these amazing artists We don't have that anymore.
Let's look at the amber room that's still missing to this day. That's like one of the greatest work of art. Like it's just beautiful. Like,
I just got
you look at
startled
what
by
we're
my own
finding.
phone.
You look at what's been destroyed just through war, what's been taken out. It's just really sad. Where do you hope to go with all of this? Like, where would you like to start? I mean, Antarctica obviously is a big one. I think there's like a long line of people that would love to follow you in there. Me for one. I'll carry your bag. It's just tote along behind you.
I'll make food.
Yeah, there we go. See, now we're a posse. We
That's
can do
it. You have an entourage.
Yeah.
I think it would be great to open up some projects in South America, Chile, for instance, and
Loaded.
get a group take, but under a strict proviso of everybody contributes, and at the end, we come to an agreement or formula of what we've discovered, and an interesting way of re-examining some of these wonderful ancient buildings and stuff. And
Easterbrook,
yeah,
heads, right? That's down that way, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really open up some forums. Where I was talking to Wayne Murphy about this recently regarding the Templar voyages to the USA, and one of his ideas, which I'm on board with, is to open up forums where people can go and contribute and in that way. So many different ways of approaching something, but we've got to start somewhere, eh?
I think it's a great idea. There's a lot of people who have amazing ideas, and they're never allowed to contribute. You don't know what's there. That's just one example of a history-changing event. That's where you come in handy, because you can look at all the stone. You can look at, it's evidence. It's all there.
There's something there for sure.
But how do you see? Here's my question to you: how do you put an age on that? Because this is stone. It's a rock. It's a cave. It's you can carve and date the stone and say it's this old. But how do you determine how old the carving is?
Well, this is where there are different ways of coming to a conclusion. Obviously, because you can't carbon date stone, for instance. But one of the things
you can age it, though, right? Stone.
Well, yeah, you can age it through techniques that have been used. You can also see shadows where the carving once was for some reason, but has gone. Tool techniques. You can also chemically analyze steel residue on stone that a particular type of steel would have left on the surface of stone, for instance. And there's also artistic style, and also you get a feeling with stuff that's been, or that I've seen that have been fake. There's a feel to it. There's an insincerity that you can pick up. You get an instinct for that. And I know quite a few big dealers that are very good at, judging that kind of fakery, yet they've got no technical expertise at all. So I can say what type of chisel's being used or whatever. I also know some of the techniques that they use when they will say create a forgery. For instance, with marble, you can actually open it up to some extent, the pores, by firing boiling water at it, for instance, and then I'm giving all my secrets away here, aren't I?
No, you don't have to do
You
that.
don't have to. It's okay.
We
okay.
don't do that. But that's interesting.
But then you will then cover it in earth, and it seeps into the minute openings that has been created with the hot water, for instance. So there's all sorts of ways that, you know, they're always generally one step ahead of, you know, the system to some extent. I remember when I was in London on one occasion, I went to see this gallery. I was interested in working for this guy actually as a validator, shall we say. And he said, I'd just come out of college actually in the south of England, and he was from the Middle East, this guy, and he said, if you can tell me what is forged in here and what isn't, he said, I'll give you a job. So guess what? I didn't get there. They were so cleverly disguised that, for instance, you can have like a portion of an artifact, for instance, and they will fabricate the rest and fix it so you can't tell. You know, you might have 1/3 of it that's real, and they'll add in other bits that aren't in with the same type of stone, and it's so hard to see. It's impossible to see how they've done it, you know.
Wow.
So you're dealing in very, very advanced techniques. And later on, I got to be a bit sort of smarter at seeing what was what. But again, you know, back to what you said to start with, you know, there's various ways that one can validate an item that's been carved in stone other than carbon dating, you know.
Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting. It's definitely a curiosity. I guess you would also know, like we'll use the Templars just as an example, because you've worked around, you know, a lot of their monuments, or let's say burial sites, where you can see how they would have written things or how their markings should look, right? And I imagine that changed through time. So if you're coming in, let's say, looking at 13th century or 14th century stuff, and you get to this part of the world and it's very similar, where it might have been different in, let's say, the 11th century, do you look for things like that also?
Yeah, exactly. And what, you know, one of my main areas is Knight Templar tombstones or related Knights of the Holy Orders, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I used to, when I worked with Andrew Sinclair, who wrote The Sword and the Grail, and Ross Lynn and various other books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we analysed various symbolism on Templar tombstones, and not only that, obviously we were analysing the type of stone, where they were carved, and by whom, in what area. So much information that we had, it was conclusive that we were able to prove a genre or a type of symbolic referenced Templar tombstone tops to certain areas, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
The main gain that we made, was the tombstones that were found. Well, there's one actually at Kilmartin, which is a ring cross tombstone with a sword, and there's a bit of decoration on that as well, and the Steps of Solomon. You usually get those facets. You get the stem of Jesse, a quatrefoil cross that disguises the Templar cross itself. It emanates from the Steps of Solomon, and then quite often you get a sword on it, and sometimes other symbols like a sand timer, or like, for instance, a 90-degree Ankh set square and things like that. These are all related to Templars, but obviously from when the Templars came into being, 1128 or something around that, I don't know the exact date, and went right, you know, to when they were finished after Bannockburn. the style of the carving changes because, for instance, the tools were different as well. So they were progressively making better tools. So you get sharper images, for instance, and there's so many variables in that. We can only go by specific symbolism that was historically utilized by the Templars. But in the end, it was a guy that I worked with in Edinburgh called Hugh Douglas, who's a master stonemason, and a very, very, very good stonemason carver, one of the best in Scotland. And he discovered, whilst he was building a wall at Temple Ballantradock, which is their HQ, 3 tombstones, all with the same symbolism on as the one that was at Kilmartin, that was often referred to as a site where Templars had been before these areas, and in next to stones that had got Scottish, Norwegian culturally symbolic items on them. There was this one tombstone that was exactly the same as the one at Ballantradock. So case proven, because the historical people were saying, oh, you can't actually say what's a Templar tombstone and what isn't. Well, actually, if there was going to be a place that Templar tombstones were going to be at, it would be at Temple Ballantradock in Scotland, which is their headquarters, isn't it? So, and then we find the one that's exactly the same at Kilmartin. So you can see how that was an interesting proven, and I've done the paper on that. It's just I haven't had enough time to get it published properly yet. So, but when I do, you guys will be the first to see it.
Oh well, thank you. We'll have to publish it and come on the show and tell everyone all about it. To me, it's very exciting. A lot of people even looking at the Templars having a Norse Viking connection. They don't realize that there was a huge connection between them. Huge. You just have to. It's all out there. Just read, people.
Oh yeah. Well,
I'm laughing at the way you said that. Just read. You sound like my teacher in grade 7. Just read.
Sorry.
Read the book.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, multiple connections with the Templars in various multi-dimensional ways, but of course, one of my theories is, I've not proven at the moment, but it's getting closer, is that remember when the Templars fled France?
Yes.
Just as the word was out against them, and they'd captured, I think, 50 Templar knights at somewhere or other, and in Paris, around Paris, and they'd started to burn them to death as heretics. And they lost the Templar, what they thought was the Templar fleet, sailed from La Rochelle bearing, they say, skull and crossbones. And we have a testimony from an interesting Templar source that we see all the time, saying that they left La Rochelle with chests of treasure and aboard 18 of the Order's ships. I did some further research, and although the Hospitallers had their own fleet, it wasn't. I couldn't find anything about the Templars having their own fleet. For instance, they contracted in generally Norwegian or Viking master mariners, because they obviously going all over the world. They contracted these guys in and then put their troops on board these vessels and armored them to some extent. I believe that the Sinclairs that were based we found out since that they were based in the Shetlands. This is some of the interesting research I've been doing with Wayne Murphy. I believe that those vessels that came down to rescue the Templars were Sinclairs. Now, we know that they had 13 vessels, big vessels, war vessels, and numerous other smaller merchant ships. But I'm sure that's one of the major connections between the Sinclairs and the Templars. They went down to La Rochelle for the Templars. It was them, the Sinclairs, that rescued them, and that's where you get because obviously the Sinclairs are direct descendants of the Vikings.
That's right.
Still operating at that particular time in Viking lore in Orkneys and the Shetlands and stuff. That would account for the mysterious fleet, in my mind, anyway.
That would make a lot of sense, especially for that, that era. Absolutely. 1307. Absolutely. I don't know. It's fascinating. Do you think that we know they've made it they went west, obviously, at some point, because they've been, there's remnants of them, in South America. And we know they've been to North America. Do you think it was that fleet?
Yeah, I do. I believe it was the Sinclair fleet and not Templar, like a contracted Templar fleet that they'd had down in La Rochelle. I believe, the Sinclairs knew there was communications going on. They went down for the refugee Templars, shall we say, and their treasure. And it makes sense also because one of the titles of the Sinclairs was sacred guardians of sacred treasure and holy relics. That was one of their official roles.
That's right.
So, I'm kind of colouring in, a jigsaw puzzle with a few of the bits missing. So, well, that's how we arrive at interesting history.
Well, we know that Henry came over. Do you think that they came over before that? Do you think that's where, for example, Oak Island comes in? Maybe that's where Wayne Murphy comes in. I mean, I know, I had Templars that came from Portugal. I had, a great grandfather came over from Portugal and settled in northern Quebec. Do you think that would have been these guys? Because I don't know that, like you say, I don't know that they would have had whole fleets of ships to come over unless you had the occasional one that made their way over.
I think the Vikings were roaming in those areas before the Sinclairs, and I think that information was passed down through to the Sinclairs. I think they were sharing the same maps.
Yes.
They were using navigational techniques, advanced navigational techniques that they kept quiet because it was seemed as, witchcraft, like lodestones and, magnetized needles in water and things like that to find true north. All these things the Vikings were using anyway. And it's not a great step away from the Sinclairs. The Sinclairs were essentially Vikings operating sort of on the periphery of, British monarchy or English monarchy. Obviously Scotland and England at the time were often at war. So the Sinclairs connection was, I think, that when Prince Henry 1398, he'd gone over, but before that, and we discussed this with Wayne, there were other Sinclairs, and vessels and history of sailing and exploration. I think they'd already been over to North America, and I think people had been over before then.
I agree
Clan
with
Gunn, for instance, where my clan
you.
from Scotland, they, also called the Ancient Sea Kings. They were involved with the Sinclairs constantly, either at war with them or best friends with them. And it brings in this great Norse heritage and ancient seafarers who were traveling from Greenland as a motorway shipping, like a motorway service station. Oh, they will stop off at Greenland and then on the way to, to North America. It accounts for so much in actual fact.
Yeah, I mean, there's settlements here in Canada that show they figure, Vikings going back to like 800, 850 AD at least. So sorry, Columbus. Damn, that's got to be hard. But, like, it doesn't, I don't know. It's just one of those things to me that doesn't make sense that this is, that they could label 1425 as being first contact from Europe. It makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
I forgot I had my mic muted because little man went down the stairs and he freaks me out when he goes downstairs. I think he's going to bark because no one's
went
here.
Downstairs.
Yeah. No, I had said Columbus was there 1492. That's a long haul.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a long haul from
it is
from the 800s.
It is. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's
well, they're showing evidence now of Vikings being in South America also.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they was it in the same form, because obviously there were Norse Templars, of course there was. It was a multinational organization, and they were all over. They were all over these different places, and did these battles against the Templars' enemies, for instance. Did they continue under the guise of piracy? So many different pirate ships out there at the time, raiding Spanish and Italian vessels.
It makes sense. The Templars were money masters, so to speak, bankers, and allegedly in the Caribbean, pirates were the same. And it makes sense that they could very well have been one of the same with respects to what was going on in the background. A financial kingpins, shall we say? Probably
still have pirates.
They were smart. Yeah, but they were smart. They knew how to manage it. They knew how to make it grow. They knew how to invest it, to lend it. They were our society's bankers, so to speak, way before that came into play. So I don't know. It makes sense. It makes sense to me. I don't know. I'm sure not the only one.
I mean. The other thing, just back to North America, when I was on the Grand Banks, when I was doing the rescue boat stuff out there, and Hibernia Field, and up into the Grand Banks and stuff, a lot of the Newfoundland seamen there, they were telling me about Portuguese. Oh yeah, that vessel's Portuguese. That one is. Yeah, they've been coming here for hundreds of years for the cod on the Grand Banks. So you've got another possible conduit of Templar connection there. It was it's common knowledge that the Grand Banks and the waters around Newfoundland was you could throw in a basket and pull out 5 cod. There was so much cod, and of course it became overfished in the end, and the fishing industry collapsed in Newfoundland. But they were coming from Spain and Portugal for the fish, and ancient fishing boats. It wasn't such a big deal to think that people came from Europe before Christopher Columbus. I don't know what all the fuss is about.
I know it's true.
It's like,
it's true. I think
history books. Sorry.
I was going to say, no, it's true. I was going to say the only
books.
reason it's become that is because it's become It's academia.
That's a lot of ink.
It's written. It's
That's a lot
not
of
written
ink.
in stone, but it's written. So,
Yeah.
you know, so you want to start out in Chile. Is there somewhere specifically that you'd like to sort of get your hooks into, so to speak?
Well, where I was, I'd like to return to, which is Chiloe, which is full of sea legends and lots of pirates settled in this particular area, which is like an area where there was huge volcanic activity and lots of little islands and sea inlets, inland seas. Because I think there's been a lot going on there. A lot of people, including, of course, many people escaping World War II, Nazis and stuff, had gone over to Chile. In a lot of people think it was mainly Argentina. It wasn't. There was a huge amount in Chile as well. And if there was any place I was going to go to escape, then it would be Chile, because it's inaccessible and remote, and of course, there's many ancient edifices and buildings out there that not many people have seen. It's almost virgin territory,
It's where I'd want to be, just because I like to be left alone. Sorry, people. I'm sociable, but I'm
Is there
really
a beach?
bit of a I like to be left.
Is there a beach where no one will bother me? But I do need a butler. I'm sorry.
But I think it comes down to Argentinian government was also protecting them. For the most part, that's probably why they felt it was a safe haven. Because I agree with you. Otherwise, you'd think that you would get in there and just head for the hill, sort of thing.
Well, yeah, and of course, you've got whole areas in these countries and villages that actually they speak German first. There was a history of people going out there from Germany before ever, either of the wars,
right?
the First and Second World War, and yeah.
So Chile. Are you planning on heading to one of these remote places and disappearing?
Not just yet, but I'm going to try and move in down into trying to get as close to Punta Arenas and Antarctica as I possibly can. But
what are you hoping to find?
Well, I want to observe what's going on first and foremost,
right?
And I'm endeavouring in various legitimate ways to get out there, but even as a artist in residence or something, because there's been quite a lot of that happening in the past down there, and of course I've just done the bust of the guy that rescued.
Congratulations!
Yes, congratulations on that for sure.
It's beautiful.
Shackleton's crew off Elephant Island, Pilotto Luis Pardo, which was as a result that came about as a result of my trip to Chile before, which I was able to stay for a few months and stuff. So it's all connectingly moving in that direction from what I can see. But I'd like to get some sponsorship for that, I think, and maybe write 10,000 word paper or something on an initial journey, shall we say, and scope it out. That's a better way of putting it, I think, to scope out the prospect of a full exploration. Which could be televised. Obviously there's so many different ways that I think it could be very commercially beneficial to have something like that going on.
So then we need to connect you up with a producer who can do that.
Yeah, yeah. I know that it's not an interest. It's not something that's easy to accomplish. But
Well, Antarctica would be a stretch, I think, because it's
That's a
just so
big
top
budget.
secret right now. Yeah, they're just, yeah, it's so top secret. I don't know that they're willing to open it up to anybody who they would, let's just say they would not allow you to talk about it. I think if
No.
you were brought in, it would be a gag order saying, okay, try and date this, or what's your thoughts on it. But I don't know that they would let you speak of it, so to speak, and blah, 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 just babble on with that one. I don't think they would let you tell many people about it. I think they want to keep it quiet. Maybe you're looking at an ancient technology, like you say, down there that they're not willing to share just yet.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't thinking directly to get to that stage immediately, but
Oh no, you just think big and do it.
That's a huge budget for a
Why
production
limit
company.
yourself? Yeah, it's why limit yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but based on the fact that we would be site specifically analyzing ancient stones, for instance, and how these stones were worked based on my work as a stonemason, stone sculptor and stuff, and the work I've done in the past. There's a good possibility that I'm going to be, or probability that I'm going to come up with some interesting information about working techniques of ancient cultures and civilizations, or maybe a little more than that,
Mm-hmm. No, right. Well, I agree. I think you live in an area where you do it all the time. I mean, your resume has to be fantastic if you're working with museums and so on. And I think that will be your ticket to, anyone taking it seriously. Do you think people, and I'm only, coming at this from somebody, let's say, who's not educated in, or may not know a whole lot about ancient civilizations. Why do you think we should know more about this? What do you think it can do, let's say, for future generations? I personally think it has to be done so we can learn from it, because we're clearly failing in a few of these departments.
Well, yeah, I just, I think the generalized information that we've been talking about regarding ancient stone civilizations has been done to death in the generalized sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should get down to examining physically stone by stone,
Mm-hmm.
and let's have a look at what tools they use. Let's have a look at why we're not being able to find what tools on the main that they were
That's a
using.
big one.
Yeah, and also the idea that, like for instance, King Tutankhamun's that dagger that they found,
yeah, the
that he
meteorite.
had, absolutely made out of, the blade is made out of meteorite. One of my theories is that they had some form of chisels, say, various ancient cultures, for instance, they're stonemasons. I think they were forging steel by adding meteorite compounds that they were finding. That would make them. Now they would shift stone.
Wow, that's actually really interesting, because that's like pretty hard, isn't it? That would be difficult to cut. Have you ever worked with it? I know it's not like easily accessible, but it is out there.
Yeah, I think they were using the ore in the meteorite to make tools to cut the limestone that they used to build the pyramids, for instance. That's also tempering it to in a certain way so that it could cut obsidian and granite and the harder stones.
My favorite, obsidian.
Let's just look at Hamilton and Carl's obsidian chalice that they figured took 7 years to carve. What, in your opinion, do you think they could have used for something like that? Because obsidian is really hard.
Yeah, it's a frightening prospect to try and examine something like that, and I wouldn't
Right.
I wouldn't want to do that just like glibly. You know, I mean, I would have to write a proper report on it and stuff like that. But my own theory on that, and I may be way off.
Oh, we're not holding you to it. It's just a theory.
Just us three.
Yeah, I think they came from greater antiquity. I think it's we're looking at something here that's
truly priceless.
Well, truly priceless, but anomalous. It's I've handled it, you know,
right,
and it's not like the ones that we did on the show. That's you know, limestone, for instance, marble.
Right.
It's so hard and it's so beautifully carved. What materials did they use to carve? What tools did they use to actually manufacture or carve that? I mean, and there is a process that you can go through if you're turning the same thing, say, in wood,
right?
And you can turn stone. But this, you know, this is almost as hard as iron. It takes supernatural technology to be able to cut something like that. You know, without actually almost an abrasive technology, whereby it's not going to be, you know, impact vulnerable to the impact of a hammer and chisel, for instance. You imagine trying to carve something like that and move it. It's so hard.
Yeah, and it obsidian. I wonder if it meant for them what it does to us in this field. What we use obsidian for, protection and good energy. I wonder if they had the same kind of feeling when they were like, why pick something so difficult to carve?
Unless it was already there.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
That's
a great point. Yeah. Why pick it? It just doesn't make any sense. That's a great point, Michelle. Yeah.
That is a good point, Michelle, because we've got here, you know, a thought process going on, and you wouldn't choose something that hard to carve if you didn't have the tools to be able to carve it, or a technology to be able to do it. But for me, that obsidian chalice is it's a supernatural item, you know.
Yeah, Hamilton's not giving it up. We tried.
I know. No, I was pretty attached to it.
Yeah, he's not giving it up.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, especially when you don't necessarily have time on your hands. Let's face it, you know, to carve something like that. I mean, unless it was a hobby, just to take years to do it. Like,
oh my gosh. Hobby's crocheting, like what I do. And it takes me a week. I'm complaining. I can't imagine 7-8 years plus.
Well, if that's the theory for sure, you know.
It's a beautiful piece though. My God. It's a beautiful
Let's
piece.
jump over to the pyramids, because I've been, so I can have an understanding of the architecture. How do you think they did it? Like, how do you think they did it?
Well, again, it's for me, knowing, you know, say you've got a rough piece of stone. The process to make a squared block, for instance, is quite complex. It's quite complex. One of the projects we used to do at college was, you know, you have to they train a stonemason to find a random piece of stone that's sound, you know, that's going to be okay, and to square it up so that it's perfectly square to be able to build. And that process has gone on for time immemorial. You know, a mason gets a piece of rough stone, he finds a surface where he starts to level that surface, and then he uses a particular technique to square the block up so that it's at 90 degrees, and it's got a bed where you can lay the bed on top of another stone and it's called from the rough ashlar to the smooth, from the rough stone to the smooth ashlar, and that is the building block, the main building block of how a mason is trained. Once you can do that, you adapt those skills to various other tasks, and craft denomination of skill. And so imagine doing that on a rough scale to a block that's irregular or rough, that weighs 2 tons. For instance, every time you have to cut a side, you have to shift the stone. And to move a stone that's 2 tons, for instance, because that's what they are, that's what we're looking at, some of those stones, you're going to need a team of 5 or 6, maybe even 7 people to lever it over, turn it, prepare it, cut off the rough, square it up, and apparently they were doing these things, with wooden set squares and plumb lines and measuring equipment and stuff. I just cannot get my head round that process times 3 million, No,
I mean, they're huge. I've climbed that pyramid. I know it's big. These things are massive. And what if you have a flaw in the stone? Like, can you tell right off the bat when you start with if you're choosing a piece of stone to do a sculpture, let's say, can you tell if there's going to be a flaw in it? Are there things you can look for that? Because they would have run into, let's face it, you're not going to hit a winner every time. No,
there's ways of being able to, you don't get it right all the time, but you can, a stone will ring if it's got a flaw in it. It sounds like a cracked teapot, for instance,
right.
Or it will ring true.
But even on something that big,
even on something that big, there's you can, another way is to wet the stone, and if you let it dry out, but if there's a crack in it, you'll see the line where the crack is because it remains wet. Okay. So, there's various ways to be able to tell, but that process would have been, when those stones were quarried, the quarrymen themselves would have been able to, work out what was going to be good stone from good beds of stone or not. And that's down to the expertise of the people that chose the areas to bring the stone from. And so stones would come from the quarry roughly to shape, but not squared as you would, for building purposes. And you're talking within normal stonemason can work within a millimeter, if not, to level a surface. Very, very, very accurate. And the Victorians were probably the most accurate, and their work, in context to cathedral building and stuff like that, was very, very precise, because they were using, by that time, chisel technology was well advanced, and they had very, very sharp chisels. But you can see the progress, say from 1100 through to say 1300. You can see how, for instance, cathedrals have improved. The workmanship to some extent has improved, and through having good tools,
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time at the large Gothic church in Glasgow, which is supposed to be the largest Gothic church in the UK. And the architecture in there, I mean, can't compare it to Rosslyn, let's say, for example, because geez, you can't really, that just leaves you speechless. But I look at that as being supernatural, personally, just the detail there. But examining, it's like the stone in this other church, it's like the whole place just seems, I think if you can tune in to the frequency of stone, it resonates, it vibrates.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were splitting. I was helping a stonemason friend recently. We were splitting some big blocks of slate, and that was quite a delicate operation. But
Jeez,
they'll go
yes.
a block itself. They will talk about it being good metal, or it rings like a bell because of the sound that the stone produces. And when you're splitting a block, you can hear the sound more so than seeing anything visual. You can tell when you're what you call riving a piece of stone, which is you put a big, you're splitting it through the beds. You can hear the change when it starts to split. But is it I've often wondered, is it the force of the pressure of the chisel as it goes between the beds that's splitting them, or is it the sound vibration, the power of that's splitting the beds? And that was what brought me about. That was one of the processes. When I made the slate harp that I made, which is the only one in the world actually that plays. It was strung by Oxford University.
It's beautiful.
And it was strung by Oxford University Medieval Music Department.
Wow.
And that was a combination
an honor.
Yeah, it was. It was.
For them as well. I meant for them. For them, it was an honor.
But, we're into the realms of resonance and huge amounts of work going on now. There's quite a lot going on at the Gorton Monastery, incidentally, with, the resonance and stuff, and some of the research and experimentation that's going to be happening there, which is started in actual fact.
Wow, that's exciting. So this is, what do you do from here? Because as we're coming to the end of the segment, tell us what you have coming up and how people can find you.
Just have to plug you in here because I think I'm nearly out of gas.
And we're almost done. You did good.
I heard petrol's really crazy in the UK right now.
There we go. So what's next? What do you have that you're working on now, and what's coming up?
Well, I'm actually carving some boulders of slate boulders very hard at the moment. Wow. And then I'm going north to Sinclair Castles to do some research up there. Very but I mean, I was just going to say it might be a good idea to, have an interview outside Sinclair Gurnigo Castles if you wanted.
Absolutely. You don't have to twist this arm.
You make it so hard for a girl to turn you down.
Exactly. No, absolutely. You just have to let us know when you're there. Let me know. I'll schedule you in. I'll see what we have because we're already booking, the whole first quarter of the year.
Yeah. That's we could sort something out for that. And
okay.
As normal, it's been a great pleasure talking to you guys.
Always. So
an honor to speak with you. Thank you.
I guess people can find you on Facebook, Shawn Williamson. They can find you at Team Templar North America. Shout out to Wayne Murphy, also Team Templar North America. And where else can they find you if they need you or they want to employ you for your services of antiquity?
Yeah. Services in my exploration of ancient artifacts, and I mean it's such a deep, all-pervasive question that we've gone through tonight. But we can only do our best there.
That's all we can do, and I think people will be really interested when this airs tonight. So we will be in chat, Amelia and I. So we're going to do our best to answer questions. We're not Shawn, but we will do our absolute best. So I'm sure Shawn will be happy
Michelle's
to
pretty
be
close.
No, I'm a dabbler. I just dabble. That's it. I read, I research, I learn every day. So, But thank you for joining us. And it's always a pleasure. You're so informative. It's just, honestly, I learn something all the time. And it's nice to get your perspective on all of this. You're just fun.
Great.
Fun.
Okay, that'll do me.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. Have a
See you,
good
folks.
night.
Okay, bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. And for everyone who will be tuning in, please remember to find us in chat. I am going to try to put this out through StreamYard, which means it will hit all 8 different platforms for you to listen to. The best place to get us on will be UFO Paranormal Radio Network. I will try to log in here and see which Facebook pages are the most active. So maybe while Amelia's manning YouTube, I can bounce around to Facebook if there's any action going on. So big thank you to Shawn Williamson, who's just amazing as always, and Folgers Coffee for just being completely awesome and sponsoring us from day one. Thank you, Dr. Snick, aka Justin Snicker, for providing us your music and your voice as always. So please head over to the YouTube channels, subscribe. If you'd like to drop us a line, we are starting to book heavily now for the first quarter of the year for guest appearances. So if you'd like to see someone come on the show, or if you'd like to maybe consider being a guest yourself, please hit us up at the Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. The Outer Realm Contact at gmail.com. And tomorrow night, you guys are going to love this. Robert Bosnack will be joining us, and he's going to be discussing one of my favorite topics, which is alchemy. Oh, yeah, alchemy. So until then, Amelia and I bid you a good night. In our case right now, happy afternoon, as it's probably 3 p.m. And we'll see you tonight in chat.
You have been listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, airing live every Wednesday and Thursday evening, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 to 10 p.m. Central, on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.